So it's interesting. Well, all your guys' stories, you guys are talking about how you guys discovered certain things, didn't know if you liked it, because you guys were only able to watch really what was on network, what was provided here in the United States. Now that's changed. Absolutely, a completely different world we live in. Because I mean, my dad tried to connect with me with his cartoons, with Hanna-Barbera, Mighty Mouse, and things like that. But now you're doing it with Dragon Ball Z. You're doing it with Sailor Moon. You're doing it with other shows that Pokemon, for example, Digimon, things that were only available, but now it's expanded. What has changed, Kyle? Tell me a little bit.
Primarily, it's people like us that grew up with it already having an interest versus our parents who literally like Speed Racer was like one of the only things they might be able to Astro Boy, some older things like that made it over. So there's a whole lot more access. Kids can watch this on multiple streaming services legitimately, which is a crazy thing for people like Brian and I that never, we get to import DVDs and stuff like that. We didn't know any better, but that I think is the biggest thing is the spread of it, which brings in dangers because we know anime has a lot of inappropriate things, and you really got to have a handle on it because some things might look inappropriate. Say, we all know there's a lot of cultural stuff that goes in with bathhouse scenes, and that bathing's completely different in the West than it is in other parts of the world, and especially our parents might see some scenes going on with bathroom stuff and thinking, oh, this has got to be inappropriate, and it's like, no, this is a family moment, it's character driven, and this is just the way it is differently. So now you got parents that kind of know it now, and it's been that us being able to grow up with it, Toonami and whatnot, and then it being so easily available. I mean, look how big AX is. Look how big manga outsells comic books. You've got some of the biggest things out there are anime. Freaking a Netflix anime wins Anime of the Year at Crunchyroll Awards. That was crazy. Heavily driven by people in the West being fans of that RPG and things. It's just spread quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's like if you blink, you'll miss so much, and then people talk about it like, wow, that sounds really good, but I don't have the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you try to fit in as much as you can.
So with so much available, and then also just, I mean, so much merch and so many streaming services now offering it. Brian, you work a lot with kids, and also as a personal story. How much of an impact can that help in making new friends and making connections in the outside world?
Yeah. So for those of you just arriving, I've worked in childcare for over 20 years, and I currently work with 6th through 12th grade youth. And the first thing I see every time, I give them a tour of the facility and show them, oh, this is where we do this is where we do that. You always have those youth that have that nervousness, that shyness. I had recently, this was a couple weeks ago, we started our summer program, and I had a young youth come in, and she was very nervous, and we walked through the whole facility. She never said a word, and we get to the art room, and on the wall is Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, JoJo, like all drawn and created by our youth. And the second she saw it, she lit up and just started smiling, and I'm just like, oh, you like anime? And so I was like, I can introduce you to every artist who created all these works. So as the day progressed, she was sort of in her little corner. Some of those youth started showing up. I started introducing her, and then before you know it, by the end of the day, she's sitting at the table having snack, smiling, having a good time. And that's that's the big thing I want to talk about in this panel, is just being around youth and seeing that, even experiencing it in my life, the power of anime as far as bringing people together, and just sort of there's a comfort to it.
Yeah.
And I see it constantly. You see somebody wearing that, like I said, that JoJo shirt, and you're like, oh, and you run up, hey, how's it going? So yeah, I've seen it for 20 years with what I do, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a good icebreaker.
Amazing icebreaker.
I mean, we all kind of wear uniforms with our favorite shows or movies. Back in our younger days, when anime wasn't as available, you could identify Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, DC, whatever the case may be. Nowadays, it's like you see the kid in the Naruto shirt, you see the kid sitting over there wearing Dragon Ball Z, and it really does allow someone to be like, hey, there's one of me. There's someone that I can probably talk to. I think that generational aspect is a big difference. When we were growing up, it was the weird cartoons, it was the silly things, it was just yelling. Everyone only recognized, Pokemon and Dragon Ball, or maybe Sailor Moon. So that's all what anime was. And now there's so much available. You can actually share touching story, character-driven stories with your kids that touch on things that they're going through, from relationship stuff to familial things, and something that's really near and dear to our hearts. The idea of moving. We were all Army brats. All of us went to multiple elementary, middle schools. I had 3 different high schools.
I had 4.
There you go. there you go.
Just the one.
And you can find content like words bubble up like soda pop, talking about the anxiety of seeing that moving date on the calendar. And I mean, like, I know what that's like, having to say goodbye to friends. And anime has always been there since I discovered it. It's always been there to allow me to have that kind of emotional outlet and touchstone. And I highly encourage people to share it. It's more than someone just screaming at the screen. There's so much more to it, and you can find something that will really touch and move someone.
Yeah, I wish I had it growing up, because it's like, because there was only so much that I could have found. But hearing people's stories, it's like, man, I really wish I had that, because it was just me, all quiet. So.
Let me clarify. I work with 6th through 12th grade youth on a military installation, so there's a constant flow. They're constantly moving. They're 2-3 years. So yeah, like I said, anime is nice. It's 2 things I've always noticed. It's usually music and anime. It's like, what do you listen to, and what anime are you into? That's the 2 icebreakers.
Yeah. So as you guys, let's stay on that a little bit. Anime is offering relatable stories and amazing characters with something that you don't see in any other form of animation or even live action, which is things like internal monologues or expressing emotions outward with different symbols and different forms of animation. Christine, how would that help you to bridge the gap maybe with your son in being able to talk about what a character is actually feeling based on what they're saying?
Yeah, there's some things that I haven't shown him yet, like words bubble up like soda pop, where it's like, there's, something that a kid can make fun of, and you're trying to hide it, and you're like really self-conscious about, something about you. But there's been many things where, we've explained from multiple shows, mainly educational, because he hasn't really hit that point yet, dealing with things that are self-conscious. So it's mostly educational, but there is stuff that's like, I got a good list, or I'll add a list, make it, add it to the list. So.
Used Dr. Stone a few times with him, not just on the educational side, but like the drive and the positivity Senku has. He's got one purpose, and that's to bring 7 billion people back to life. And one of my favorite things about that show, and I have a really important tie to that. Check out the Genreverse. You can see how Dr. Stone may have saved my life on that video. But he gets scared sometimes, like the scene when they go to get the sulfuric acid there in the crater, and he's shaking, and Chrome sees him shake, and they take time to show that, and for the most part, you've just watched him march through obstacle after obstacle, and here's a moment where the hero is human, and it's great for him to see that, because he gets scared. We all do, he gets nervous, and it's good to show him. And I love how Dr. Stone manages to do that stuff. So.
Yeah, and then also, like we've mentioned, like with Senku making mistakes, it's okay to do that, because kids of course get frustrated, so we're having to explain, like, there's a process, and you got to find out what doesn't work sometimes to get to what does. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now let's get into something a little bit more difficult. Like, how do you go by controlling the content? I mean, we just talked about how you just blink and there's just a whole new set of series out there. How do how do you gauge what is appropriate or not? Because I mean, there's a lot of shows where 3 episodes in, you're good, and here comes this 4th episode out of the blue, and it is definitely a whole different rating.
Yeah, we like right now, I still have the streaming services passwords in there. It's just automatic. Eventually, I'm gonna have to like cut that out because he hasn't been like super curious yet. And then there's just stuff that I just watch ahead of time, or I'll do research. He's not super heavy into it yet, but there's like Cells at Work we had watched, and it's like, oh my god, I think he'd really love this. So it's like we're trying to get him involved. So far so good, but it's always on my mind to watch and like prepare to have conversations or to skip episodes. So yeah.
That's a good one. You can't, like, Crunchyroll doesn't have the profiles like a Max or Disney Plus where you can set up a kid's profile. It's either mature content on or off, right? Unless you want to pay for separate stuff. So you've gotta research it. You gotta look up at least the synopsis. Ratings don't even cover it though, and it's so subjective to individuals. You take a show like Gridman, right? Overall, man, you could let a preteen watch most of that until you get to certain scenes with Akane, the scene, the stuff at the river. Some people might start feeling, they linger on certain shots of some of the bodies and things like that. Parents kind of gotta, like, it's that small of a scene, and it's only really in that one episode where some parents might have issues, but it's deep into it. So it all kind of depends on you as the parent to be willing to watch ahead, do the research, Google it, is there anything in this series that might be bad, because it's rated TV 14. But there are some, in my opinion, he can watch all of it. I mean, most of the show is easy for a 9-10-year-old to watch and enjoy, So that's on us as parents and guardians, older siblings, the aunts and uncles that are taking care of the kids.
It's funny because working in where I work, Berserk has become super popular. The merchandise, like T-shirts, hats, like all the kids wear it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, cool, I like Berserk. I'm like, have you watched it or do you read it? And they're like, no. And so I'm like, oh, do you have any idea? And so it's funny because I see things like that where a certain anime will start blowing up merch-wise, and they might not necessarily have seen it or read the manga because they just saw their friend had it, and they're like, oh, that's cool. And there is a lot of cool Berserk merch out there right now. But so yeah, for me, I have an anime club, and we're pretty strict as far as GPG type content that what we can show in our facility. But the kids all have phones, so they're watching their own thing, they're reading their own stuff. And as far as like reading manga, as long as they're in their own space, we don't police it, but yeah, do your research. That's my biggest thing to parents and anyone who's working with young people. Just do your research. I watch a lot of stuff, and then there'll be particular films hey, can we check this out? And I'll just do a little research on it, or maybe just take the time to actually watch it and see what's in it. But like you said, you can have an anime where 3 episodes, you're like, oh yeah, this is great, and then you hit one, and you're just like, oh no.
You gotta tell them that you gotta tell your boss you need like 4 hours of paid time a day to watch anime just for research for what the facility can show.
I might could work that out. But yeah, and working with the range of youth, 6th through 12th grade. So obviously a 17, 18-year-old gonna watch something that the 6th grader probably shouldn't. But.
Yeah.